Hey, well, I'm excited. We're sitting down with actually a couple people that are no longer here in our environment in Reading. They are in different parts of the world. Lindsay over in the UK, Maz over in Brazil. Both these individuals were here in Reading going through our school ministry some years ago. I can't even guess the number of years. I know that Maz would be about 3 years ago now because she served on our Justice Collective team. Is it 3 years or am I way off?
I think it's almost 3 years. Is it 2 years or 3 years? Last year was such a wacky year that I just don't even know anymore, Lance. No, I think it's 2 years because I've almost been here 2 years now. So yeah.
Okay. And Lindsay's over in the UK. She went through the first year of our school ministry, so she's just outside of London. And good to have you with us, Lindsay. How are you today, tonight? I don't know what time it is where you're at, but
it's 6:30 p.m. here. Yes, I'm well, thank you. And it's great to be together. It's good to see Maz. We overlapped on the anti-trafficking outreach team.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're jumping into a wonderful pool. We're talking about passion to engagement. And so I feel like this is a really good moment to talk to a couple people that were here in the school ministry environment, pouring themselves out, receiving a ton, and now they're back in some other place and they're figuring out their calling and they're living into something that they feel like God's asked them to pour themselves into. So we want to talk about that process. I guess the first question, how was the transition from graduating as a school ministry student for both of you? So I've heard different stories. For some people, it's like, oh, it's so easy. For others, like, whoa, leaving Reading and then like becoming vital in another place was actually pretty challenging. What's it like, Maz? Lindsay, you want to start, Maz?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was a bit lost at the end of third year, but a precious friend said to me, Maz, the world is your oyster. So, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I want to go back to Brazil. So I came here to Brazil, Recife, Brazil. So we are on the northeastern tip of Brazil. So we're on the beach. However, we can't swim because it's a shark breeding ground. So we've got to go sort of either way to swim or surf. About probably 20 minutes, half an hour, and then you're safe enough.
That's crazy. I was there on a different trip, and I was like, there are literally shark signs everywhere you go. Like, don't go in the water. And we're going surfing, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going surfing where there's shark signs littering the landscape. Every 10 meters you see a shark sign. I'm like, safe.
Yep. Welcome to Brazil. So my transition was sort of it was pretty quick. I did go home to Australia for 3 months, and then I came here for a trial of 3 months.
Yeah.
And that was at the end of 2019. So that was sort of September to December. Yeah. And it was all of the things, hard but good. And it was a baptism of fire, totally different culture, don't speak the language, but I love what Shores of Grace does. Yes. And how they do things really well. Yeah. And they have their hand in anti-trafficking and in communities and in restoration. Yeah. And in the legal sort of sphere of changing things. And they do street church.
Beautiful.
So
before you go too deep, because I want to definitely explore what you're doing in Brazil. I want to key on something. So you were feeling like, oh God, I'm in a tight place. You got a little pearl of wisdom from a friend. Hey, The
Yep.
world is your oyster. What
Mhm.
do you want? So you had the ability to discern something that was in your heart. I want to be in Brazil. And you started chasing.
Mhm.
I love it. I want to go deeper into the Brazil journey. But first, let's hear from Lindsay. Lindsay, so you were in Reading for a year. You did school ministry, was transitioning back to whatever normal life means. I don't know what normal is, but was that an abrupt transition or pretty natural for you?
I actually did the first 2 years of
You did 2
ministry,
years, okay.
and I finished in May 2020 with the intention of returning for third year to do third year with Tinashe Array, and then COVID hit, and COVID meant that returning wasn't simple. It meant that school was likely to be online, and so during the summer at home, I had to review what my priorities were, which is interesting because it's something you mentioned in the preamble.
Yeah.
How do we prioritize? How do we decide what really matters in a given moment? So
Yeah.
I had third year kind of removed from the table for me a little. And I decided that what was most urgent in this life, we only get to live once. And in the middle of a pandemic, was to play my part in the abolitionist movement. And I hadn't fully established what it was, but I knew, I think COVID generated a sense of urgency for me. So, so although it was hard to leave Bethel, it wasn't as hard as it would have been if there hadn't been a pandemic everywhere.
Sure.
So since March 2020, everybody was on screen the whole time anyway.
Yep.
And so I just shifted screens.
But both of you, like, I mean, this is the crux of the conversation. It's like stopping and discerning or finding. Sometimes it can feel like a wild goose chase. What's in my heart? Like what matters to me? What's important enough for me to actually start investing myself in? And this feels like the Christian life. Like, as a Jesus follower, we're following him. He's heading in a direction. Typically that direction's connected to some kind of destiny that we are aligned with or caught up in, right? And so what was that like for the two of you? Like, being able to discern, oh, this is what I want, and these are the things that are important to me. Because I think sometimes there's competing attractions, competing desires, and yet you can't chase 30 things. At the end of the day, you kind of have to make a decision and make a commitment, right? What helped you guys commit to the things that you're currently committed in?
I think for me it was the trial, like the 3-month trial. If it didn't work, I could go home. Like,
yep.
It was okay for it not to work. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
Sorry. I'm sorry. A little bit of context for our listeners. So Maz chose a place, like, you'd actually been there. We actually did a trip together, like a short-term trip. So you'd experienced this environment for whatever, a week or so, 10 days. And that was like, oh, I want to go back there. So that's good for people to know. But,
Yep, totally. So I think that answers the question from my end.
So you had the like, cool, I can give this thing a trial. And what helped you with the stay? Like, during that trial, it was like seeing the way the environment was operating. Maybe, I don't know if the Lord spoke to you.
I didn't have like specific things that the Lord was speaking to me about, but I think the longer I've stayed here, my heart has just been open more and more and more. I fall more and more and more in love with the people here.
Wow.
Whether I can have a conversation with them or not. And it's still not. Like, I can say, how are you? How's your day, kind of thing. It's getting better, but I remember one night at street church, I just sat on the ground with a kid and I just coloured. And he was just climbing all over me, and like, he was 4 or 5. And like, I was just roughhousing with him, and like, I was chasing him around, and then we'd sit down for a little while, have a drink and have some water and draw on the paper. And one of the other volunteers looked at me and said, you don't need language for this.
Wow.
Like, love is a language. And I'm like, "Ooh, snap, yep, that's true." So that was really encouraging for me. Yeah.
How about for you, Lindsay, that process of being able to discern where your yes was, what you're wanting to go after? Was it a complicated process, or was it really simple?
I'd say it was relatively simple, and I think the one key moment for me was attending the Demystifying Motherhood class in second year by Sylvia Kajakian, and week 2, Danny Carstens came. She's a young lady who used to be administrator at the school, and she basically just said, "Well, God, I can postpone this nudge I have in my heart, waiting until I have the man, the house, the things all lined up before I foster, or I can just do it because I've got you and I've got what it takes." And I remember just weeping in that class. I was double the age of everyone else in the room. Everyone had come to hear about motherhood, the baby bit. And I just knew that there was a nub of truth that was going to come that had nothing to do with birthing anybody. And I spoke to her after the class, or I hunted her down after the class, and we talked, and she prayed for me. And I remember thinking, if you can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
As a 26-year-old Texan, further from home actually than I was, geographically probably, largely unresourced financially, and I just thought, what's holding me back? What's holding me back? So I think main shifts came when I didn't let fear, the emotion of fear, stop me making the next move. And that has been true for the whole entire year. The fear has not left me.
Yeah.
I'd love to say it had, but it really predominantly hasn't. So the kind of reverence for what it means to take a child in who's broken and believe that I could be a place of refuge and haven still isn't something that I take for granted. So yeah, Joyce Meyer's recently released a book called Do It Afraid. And I haven't read it, no idea if it's a good book, but that phrase would largely be the banner of my last 14 months. And just contact the relevant organisations. It's not romantic to Google fostering in Hertfordshire. That's what I had to do. And then I found out the organisation that oversees it. I rang them, and before you know it, that ball rolls for you. So there are many other people who have a bandwagon for you to hop on. I would say to those people who think they need to start a charity or they need to start the bandwagon, you're probably a bit deceived. You've probably made it bigger and more challenging than you think. There's probably an organisation like the one Maz has joined, or a state organisation like the one I popped onto, that is already doing what you dream of doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, I mean, what do you think that is? It seems like a church sort of Christian dynamic that when we start getting in touch with our passions, a lot of the church defaults to, I have to do a big thing. I have to do like start a base or run an org, or I don't know that that's as true outside of the church. I think, humans just like, cool, okay, where can I play my part? What do you think that is? That's interesting to me. Is that like an
ego
thing, or is that an ego? What is that?
Complicating life, not believing in Jesus, really. I mean, he had all the time in the world for the widow's mite. She gave her all and it was basically nothing.
Yeah.
And he had no time for the hypocrites who had it all polished and it was worthless. I mean, I think we don't take Jesus at his word when he says, I care about the heart. I care about the where from. I think we think, oh, well, you do, but actually you also need it to be big and shiny and well-versed and branded and important and seen. And, Jesus didn't leave a great legacy humanly, did he? The things that really counted, he did on the cross and empowered by the Holy Spirit. And he did them alone. Yeah. Salvation and resurrection came through the work of Christ in pain. And I think we have to do something visibly, humanly, shiny and impressive.
Yeah.
And he didn't. So we don't.
Yeah.
We get to be ourselves, and for some people that is doing something shiny. But for the most part, it's joining in, it's being part of the body, not being another body. And I think that's liberating. But I do understand it as well. I used to be a school teacher, that's 30 people that are yours. And now I was a church leader, that's maybe a couple of hundred people that are yours. You know, you kind of get this sense of, oh, what I'm doing is of value because it's seen and wide. And actually, new mums and new dads out there will probably say, oh no, I think it's pretty important to keep this one alive. I think I've done a good job. Wow, they're thriving, amazing, I've done a good job. So I think stopping for the one is nominally valued, but actually not. And we get to actually value stopping for the one.
Well, and in your case, Maz, your yes is super connected to jumping in with someone else's projects. Like you're just like, hey, I'm here to serve. Talk about that process of as you've engaged in kind of an existing work, what's coming to bloom, like what's blossoming in you, what's the process been like? Do you yeah.
I think one of the answers to your question is experience.
Yeah.
I think I tried to reinvent the wheel when I was a youth worker in Australia, and it was really hard work.
Wow.
And it was isolating, and it just trudged. I just trudged for 10 years, like just really hard work. So I was tired of that. I didn't want to do that again. And as I went through that, I realized, why am I doing this? There's other people that have already done the work. So why don't I just join in with them? And one of the things that attracted me to Shores of Grace was the family feeling that exists here. So I don't want to do things alone. And I want to support people in the things that they are already doing. That doesn't mean in the future I can't do something, pioneer something, but especially in a new country, in a new culture, I need to learn how things are done here, and take some time to assimilate, like whether that takes 6 months or 3 years, then that's my heart. And I think that's the way that God has wired me as well, as a servant, but also as a leader. Yeah. So sometimes those things in my life like crash together, and I have to work out, how do I be a servant leader? And with my learning process at the moment, that is by demonstrating love. Okay. That is by doing what I'm asked to do, whether it be, can you hold this baby while I go and have my morning tea? Or can you sit with the girls and just watch them? Yeah. Or can you build this thing, or help clean the pool, or like lots of sort of going low and going slow, going oh so slow. Yeah. In the learning language process. But yeah.
But it is, isn't it quite liberating? I mean, there's so much freedom to just making a decision to, like, the one in front of me, one step at a time, serve well, love well, instead of like this like grand, like I'm gonna change the world and be the whatever. Like there's just so much freedom in, like, here I am, this is what's in front of me. Okay, how can I be a blessing here? Do you guys experience that freedom that I'm talking about? And
I think sometimes I do, because freedom looks different for me.
Yeah,
And I'm learning what it looks like here.
sure.
And yeah, that's a new thing, like somebody pointing out to me that love doesn't have a language.
Yeah.
That was really freeing for me.
Wow.
So I continue to hold that and yeah, remember that.
Yeah, I just think it's easy to get caught up with big vision, and then like the expense there is that we're not being present and we're not engaged in what's right in front of us because we're so caught up in trying to chase some big dream. And so let's talk a little bit about the process as you guys have found something to pour yourselves into, something to like engage with. Maz, you would say what you're engaging with is kind of transformational community development in general. It's very at the center is anti-trafficking work. Lindsay, for you, like what you're engaged in is fostering. I want to become a foster parent. I want to be available to a kid. So what is it that you guys are learning in the process? Like wherever you're engaged, however this is unfolding, what are you learning about yourselves? What are you learning about what works, what doesn't work?
I'm learning to trust myself a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm learning that I still need to punch fear in the face when I go into the supermarket.
Yeah.
Even today, here at the base, we have a cafe. And before I got to the cafe, I thought, I wonder who's working, because not everybody understands what I want when I order a coffee at the cafe. So it's taking those things moment by moment and going, it doesn't matter if they don't understand. I know I can end up with a cup of coffee. Like, I know how to say coffee and black, and then I just hand them some money. It doesn't matter if I mess up the words or like if they don't fully understand me. We'll get there. Like, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's learning to have grace with myself, and some days that's easier than others.
Yeah.
So this time last week, I was really stuck in a rut and just having trouble pulling myself out of it. So I had to pull on a friend here, one of my leaders here. I said, look, I'm struggling with this thing. Can you pray for me? And she said, yes, of course. Like, do you want to come round and we'll have a coffee? And I also reached out to my best friend in Australia, and we had a chat. Yeah. Yeah, just learning again, that's okay. You know, I am not perfect. Yeah. None of us are. And none of us have got it together. And we are going to have those days. But now in my journey, those days are shorter and they don't last as long as they used to. Yeah. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to God for that. And I'm also grateful that I've had people around me who have helped me through that, and I've done the work as well. So yeah.
Learning to thrive, right? Like not just, just grinding, but like knowing yourself well enough to pay attention to your needs and figuring out how those needs met. And I think as we talk about being poured out and being invested in a dream, sometimes we get lost. Like just all that matters is that I'm poured out. It's like, no, you actually need to have a measure of full as you're pouring out, right? So that process of staying full, staying healthy, staying sharp. Yeah, anything you'd like to speak to there, Lindsay? Like just in terms of the dynamic of like you found something you're going after. What's the process been like? What are you learning about yourself? The highs, the lows?
I'd say the process has been Well, unexpected, because a lot of it is I dotting and T crossing. You really have to ready yourself, and in the eyes of social services and the courts and the police, and there's some gritty stuff. I think I'd say I'm learning interdependence again. I think leadership can sadly, or has sadly, invited me into independence.
Okay.
And I've been ushered back, like Maz said, into really needing my friends, my family, my faith family. I'd say it's been an invitation into being a beginner again, which I'm 46. I haven't done that many new beginnings lately. I mean, Bethel was a new beginning in a way, but beginning to learn to receive is not the same as beginning to learn to give. So I think that definitely being patient when decision making is not in my control. So currently I'm on standby for a young person whose case is being heard in court, and I have been postponed for 2.5 weeks because the court is undecided as to what the best outcome is for their life. So in that indecision, I'm in limbo, and I've never seen myself so emotional, so easily knocked as now. And that's really sobering and really humbling. So I'm learning to be patient. I'm learning to reach out. I'm learning how to look after myself when I really need it, not just in a typical do some exercise, eat okay, more of when slight emergency hits and everything melts down, how to pick oneself up. And as you say, aim for thrive rather than just survive. So yeah, it's very much starting from square one. And I had thought I'd brought a bit of adulthood to the mix, and it all gets a little bit sidelined. I feel like a child again.
Yeah, it's interesting. The older we get, the more we need others. It's just crazy. Like you would think it's like competency increases, self strength increases, but it feels like the other way around. Like you're really more like, wow, I really need others, man. I really need to be folded in. That's a big thing we noticed talking to a guy that he's got like a national footprint foster care scenario, America's Kids Belong. And he said probably the biggest thing that they did that was helpful was supporting existing foster families. Like those that are fostering need some respite, they need some strength around them. If it's a foster family that's just doing it on their own, like they're like, that didn't seem like the highest level of success. Like families stop taking families when they're just on their own. So wrapping yourselves with friends and family, and like there's layers of support, big deal. I want to go back to what you said earlier though, like you haven't had a new beginning for a while. So you're like kind of going into beginner state. Like unpack that. What does that look like for you? Because I feel like when we engage in things, it's truly like we don't know what we're doing. Like it's truly like, okay, I'm starting from scratch. I feel like a beginner. So what are you learning about yourself or the process of staying upright as you're like, okay, I'm brand new at something?
Yeah. Well, there's a grid whose corners I'm going to forget some of, but one of them is unconscious incompetence. So there are things I know I don't know, things I know, and then there are things I don't know, and I'm coming across them every single day. And it's rough. It's rough. I assume if someone says by August the 6th we'll have a decision, that means by August the 6th we'll have a decision. I mean, that's what I know about dates and decision making, but in legal cases, there's too many moving parts. So it doesn't mean that actually, it means from, not on. And that's just one small example. Or, what does it mean when you're going to have an assessment? So my idea of an assessment is that there are a series of questions that are right or wrong. But actually, what if an assessment is a ploughing of all the soil of your entire life, and a process of discovering anything in there that could operate as a stumbling stone for you as a parent, a foster parent. So my interpretation of assessment was very black and white, and now it's become oh, okay, it's a bit more like a weeding and destoning process. The hope is that you'll be great soil by the end of it. The assessor is with you, like a gardener is with you.
Yeah.
But the best thing you can be along the way is honest about your stones and your weeds. Well, that's unconscious incompetence for me. I didn't know that in social work and assessment looks like that.
Yeah.
And so I could go on. So I think it's nice if you like learning, and I genuinely do, but it's not nice if you feel like you've learned something a bit after the rest of the class, you know, to be slow on the uptake. And I feel I've been somewhat slow on the uptake multiple times along the way. I have had gracious people around me, good social workers, good companions, but also some abrupt emails and some, unexpected demands, I suppose. So
It sounds like a real requirement to be, to be an overcomer and to be humble enough to keep learning and to be patient. And like when you're doing a new beginning, it's like, oh, I'm probably going to get in over my head a little bit here. So having the persistence and the fortitude, but not the kind of fortitude that makes you rigid, but you're still flexible.
Yeah, I think resilience is definitely needed. And interestingly, it's the one thing that the young people who come to you will lack.
Yeah.
They will have had too many batterings to be soundly emotionally resilient. And so in a way, I am having to grow in something that they will require of me too. So it's not in vain. The process isn't in vain at all. It's almost that you freshly harvest something that you're about to turn into bread for another. But I didn't really know that until now.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, resilience is really key.
That's interesting. Tell me what you guys do as you're in the moment and you're staying present with the inevitability of the future. So the future is coming. And so you start to think about your dreams, any measure of like, this is where I'd like to be at some stage in my life. How does that work for you guys? Does that disrupt your current and your now? Does that inspire you in your current and your now? I think we're all different people, so we navigate that in different ways. Talk about that for a few minutes.
I think that I'm 41 now, and life hasn't turned out like I expected.
Yeah.
But some days, what's the point on thinking about that?
Yeah.
Like, just make the most of where you are.
Yeah.
And don't stuff it down, like those emotions that come up. I was recently in Nashville, and I went to a support group for some women there, and one of the women said, one of the things that we say here is feel, deal, and heal. And I'm like, I like that. Because we often feel it, but we don't deal with it.
Wow.
So when those things come up, I'm like, can I deal with this now? No. Okay, I'll deal with it later. Okay. So like some people say, put it on the shelf. Like the other day, I was holding one of the babies at Bethany, and I don't have my own kids yet, and that's becoming less and less likely. And this wave of grief just punched me in the face.
Wow.
And I was just like, don't burst into tears, don't burst into tears. Like, this is not an appropriate time to do that. I'm surrounded by teenagers and we don't speak the same language, and they are not going to know what to do with me. Wow. So I just sort of went, okay, I just need to calm down. I feel that hurts. And I'll deal with that later. That's an ongoing healing for me. That's not a one-off healer. Yeah. So later that day, I talked to God about it, had a good cry. And then in those conversations that I mentioned earlier with my friend and my leader, we talked a little bit about that as well. And I am learning to deal with those things. So I think having keys like that is helpful. I also think it's really important for us to be in counselling. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Like, it is good to have somebody outside of your circle that you can talk to.
Yeah.
No holes barred. Like, and if you're a person of faith, then I think it's great to have another person of faith to be counselling you in that way. And I think it's an important part of my support system is to have a counsellor. In my mid-20s, I would say no way, no way, no way. Probably a little bit more colourfully than that. And I would just like put my head down and just barrel through. And I had a burnout, like, and that was sort of in my early 30s. So since then, I've been in counselling, and I just think everybody should be having some sort of counselling, whether it's 4 times a year or 4 times a month. I just think it's really, it's helpful. It helps you grow. It helps you feel, deal, and heal. Yeah, and it helps you be honest with yourself as well, because our friends are sometimes scared to say to us, that's not a good way to think, or a bit too scared to challenge us on things. Whereas when it's a professional, they can do it because that's their job. And it doesn't hurt your relationships.
How do you find a counselor if somebody's hearing this? What's the process?
Well, everything's online these days. I've had the same counsellor for 4 years now. I actually started seeing her when I was there in Reading, and I've just continued that relationship. I think specific counselling is good. Like, if you have different trauma or different life experience, then trying to find a counsellor who has experience in that. And just, try it and see. Like, if you go to a counsellor and it's not a good fit, then try a different counsellor. It's okay for it not to work. You can, you try different hair products. No, this one doesn't make my hair, as dry as I need it because I've got the oily hair. So just try out a counsellor. Like, it's no biggie. It's okay. And I understand that it costs money, but each and every one of us is worth that money to be spent on ourselves. Because if I don't spend the money in counselling or in therapy, whatever you want to call it, then I'll spend it in coping. So whether that's shopping, food, drug, alcohols, sex, like whatever, I'm going to spend it. So why don't I spend that money well?
That's good. So you're saying just shop online. You can find a counselor wherever you're at. Just look online. Nice. I love that. Such good advice. Lindsay, how about for you? The question of the future and dreams and staying present, and how's that work for you?
Well, to start with, I'm taking notes from Maz because I think feeling, dealing, healing, and counsel rather than coping is sound advice.
Very good.
I would say I'm going to be a bit brave now. I would say that that dreaming ceases to be dreamy once it's realized. So a dream fulfilled is reality.
That's good.
And so I'm in reality now. I had dreamt of playing a part in a movement, and God's equipped me to do that now. It's not a dream, it's now life. So there's no clouds around it, there's no song, there's no prophetic word required, it's an actuality. And I think people who love to dream sometimes don't, and I mean love to dream, don't really like life that much. So I would invite people who prefer the dreaming to the living to be a bit cautious, because dreams are future and life is today, and God is I am and Jesus is the way. So I think I would, like Maz, say that there's a mandate for us to enable a future that is the shape that we intend it to be. So last August, I contacted our local authority about fostering. You know, a year and a half ago, Maz got onto the phone to Brazil and said, hey, can I come and taste? Yes, that kind of enabling futures is really important. But I would have a word of caution around endless dreams and reluctant pinning down of said dreams. You know, if someone's got 3 journals full of words about a thing, whoa, steady on there. What's that? What's your day looking like? What's your week looking like? You know, I think days aren't dreamy, days are gritty. And, you know, I would challenge anyone listening who wants a dream to come true to ask the Lord for a change in palate, like a change in taste, because I prefer dreaminess as well. You know, I prefer future unrealities that don't require grit, commitment, tears, snot, counselling, feeling, healing, dealing, but much nicer, softer, sweeter, wonderful. But there's a partnering with God, and there's a with the Holy Spirit, when you experience the grit of forward motion of things coming about, that has to be equally him. Yeah. You know, like the dust from the rabbi's sandals, isn't it true that that was a phrase that the disciples that walked close knew it because they were grubby. And I think I've had to get over the fact that this year hasn't been sweet, dreamy, or any such thing, and that's not bad. That's Jesus dust. And I'm not a huge future looker, partly because of that, because I think staying present is the best gift I have, and also because I think the future unfolds rather than always being projected, if you're of my temperament. So I like to write. It turns out I can write. I didn't really know that until I went to Bethel. So I'm trusting that I can live the little life, or the size of life that's mine to live now, but somehow in the penning of it, there may be an extension that doesn't exasperate me, but that means that a voice to do with, you know, protection of young people can be generated without me sort of waiting for the future to happen. I think I can write in parallel. I think a lot of us can voice things in parallel to our daily grit, our daily dust, that makes good the gospel communicated. So I'm that's my take on dreams right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless you take action, where's the anointing? So, and you have impulse or desire stirring or a dream to chase, until you engage, I don't know where the anointing is. But it's interesting how much you need the anointing when you're engaged, and how much you need to be empowered when you're engaged. It's like, yeah, because we're like rolling our sleeves up and we're getting calluses and we're skinning our knees and things are happening, and I think that's when life gets good. It's like, so that's exactly what we're talking about today, is like move from passion into engagement, and there's no better time than now to go ahead and start, because there's a lot of on-the-job training yet to be had. You know, like the learning that takes place by being engaged is much different than by pondering. Well, you guys have shared so many brilliant nuggets. Like there's just all these pearls floating out of your mouths. I think there's a lot of strength and inspiration and insight that you guys have given to folks. Really excited to hear your journeys, what you guys are going after, and the yes that you have actualized, like you've turned it into action. You're going for something. I love it. Really encouraged. Any parting words as we're wrapping this thing up? We've talked about a lot. Again, really appreciate you guys taking time to share your journeys.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. And yeah, thank you for the invitation to share. Lindsay, I love you, girl. You're doing a great job. Keep it up, mate. I'm super excited for the young person who is going to get to be part of your life. That's going to be an absolute blessing to you and to them. I think the one thing that I would say is don't be surprised by the bumps and the bruises along the way.
Yeah.
Like, just because it is like, just because God has told you to do something, it doesn't mean it's going to be smooth. Like, we are told to put on the armor of God for a very good reason. Because stuff gets thrown at us. Like we are in a battle. And I feel like Lindsay and I are both like, and yourself, Lance, are both like, we're on the coalface, and the devil doesn't like what we do, because we are bringing freedom and hope and joy and life, and we are tearing down the things that he wants to keep building. And I know all three of us would say, not on my watch. And that's really hard at times. So I think we can have rose-colored glasses, and I think mine got smashed pretty quickly. So yeah, don't be surprised if you come out with a few battle wounds. It's okay. Wounds heal.
Yeah. I think I'd say, cheesy as it sounds, I really believe that life is not a dress rehearsal. And I think it's easy to procrastinate. And I know I have done it at times. It's easy to think that there'll be a future moment that's more convenient, more tailored, more straightforward, better surrounded, better financially supported, for starting A, B, C, or D. But as a person who's 46, who sort of still thinks she's 26, I can say 2 decades can really tick past pretty fast if you don't be intentional about what you do with them. And I think I've got to the point of saying, no, I'm going to stick with the fact this isn't a dress rehearsal. And I want to flick back at my photo album with Jesus, seeing the pictures we mean to have made, rather than, you know, selfies on my couch. And I don't say that lightly, because I do have selfies on my couch with various loved ones. But I don't think we mean to have a full album like that.
Yeah.
We mean to be living this life, because it's such a tiny slice. We have eternity for selfies on the couch. You know, we have an eternity of joy, security, and all the rest with the Lord once this life is over. And I kind of want to hold myself to that urgency, because the couch is comfy and it's ever present. And so is YouTube, with all the worship and sermons and I like them too. But they nourish you better when you're hungry.
Yeah.
From a challenge, from a full day, from a cold face, like Maz says. When you're already like satiated, they don't taste quite as good. So I think that's what I'd say, and say it again to myself, because, you know, you can always bottle out, can't you? So we have to remind ourselves of our intent some days. Agree with Maz. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a treat to hear aloud our whys, and remind ourselves we're part of a Bethel community as well. We've been sent, and that's been a privilege.
Amen.
Good job, ladies. Well done. Continue on in your pursuits, and wherever we need to stay connected, whatever we can do. I think what we're up to here with Justice Collective is trying to get these sorts of stories out, have these conversations be available to folks, because there is inspiration, like there is some encouragement. And that's what we're after. Like, we think people are engaged, so let's keep people full as they're pouring themselves out. And I love that point you made. It's like, yeah, my hunger is different because I'm poured out than it is like I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm not poured out. It's crazy how much more like coming to church is like it's like a drink of cool water. Connecting with my community, it's like, oh, it's refreshing because I'm engaged and there's something I'm pursuing. So, all right, we're moving from passion to engagement this month. Lindsay in the UK, Maz out in Brazil. How would people find you guys? I know Shores of Grace is a larger work that you're connected to, Maz. Lindsay, you're doing what you're doing in the UK. Do you want to offer to our listeners ways for people to connect to you? You don't. Usually we're like talking to big orgs, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So one organization I've connected with is called Home for Good.
Yep.
It's a Christian advocacy group for fostering and adoption in the UK, and they will link you to geographically local groups who are believers who want to do either thing. If you want to contact me personally, then I'm happy to say my email address now. Is that okay with you, Lance?
Yeah, it's okay with you. Yeah.
Yeah, lindsay.november@gmail.com, Lindsay spelt as on the screen. But otherwise, I'd encourage you to contact Home for Good in the UK. It's really an awesome organisation and network.
Beautiful. And then Maz with Shores of Grace, anything you want to share about details there or?
Yeah, maybe we can put like in the comments our Shores of Grace website. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy for a direct message or Instagram. I'll put my handles below and whatnot. So yeah, thanks, Lance. Appreciate that opportunity.
Okay, thank you guys for what you're doing, and really a pleasure chatting. You guys had such good stuff to share with our people. So I am going to officially say goodbye. God bless you guys, Lindsay, Maz, and for anyone that was joining us in this moment, thanks for jumping in. And we will see you next time.